Chad, Cameroon, Togo, Senegal, Niger, Mali, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Benin. So these are the 10 countries in Africa that are still paying colonial tax, even in this modern day and time. And these so-called people, through the colonial taxes these countries are paying, these countries' economy will forever remain stagnant, while the French economy prospers and flourish to the detriment of these countries. Colonialism officially ended decades ago. But when it comes to Western Europe, colonialism has never ended. Yes, because the 1884 Berlin Treaty is very much active. Colonial Pact is very, very much active up to today. So, technically saying it ended, but theoretically or practically it has not ended. But its effects are still felt in some African countries in form of colonial tax. So you see, the effects of colonialism is very much active and is very, very effective in some of these African countries based on the colonial taxes they are paying. A system where former French colonies pay money to France. So these countries are still paying money to France. These payments created during colonial times continued through agreements made at independence. So you see, these people, even up to this date and time, are still keeping this agreement our predecessors, our ancestors signed with them during independence. This system allows France to take about 85% of the annual income from its former colonies. So if French is taking 85% of the annual income of these 9 countries mentioned, so tell me, what are these countries supposed to do with the 15%? The 15% that is remaining there is just for the leader and his oligarchies to live large and have a luxury life for themselves and their families. So this is modern day wickedness of the highest order. And then these people have the temerity to open their mouth and they try to play Messiah for Africa, whereby they are the worst evil that happened to Africa. As a result, these African countries struggle financially and have to borrow their own money back from France central bank as loans. So it's not even demonic enough that French is taking 85% of their annual income, leaving them only with just 15%. These countries struggle financially and they still have to go back to France to borrow their own money from France central bank as loans. They can only request up to 20% of their money they sent. So you see, they collect 85% of their money, annual income, and when they want to borrow, they can only borrow 20%. They can only borrow 20%. And if they ask for more, it can be rejected. France says the system is to cover the cost of infrastructure and buildings it built over 100 years ago. So the resources France has been looting from these countries for over 100 years. So they have not gotten enough money for the so-called infrastructure and buildings they built 100 years ago. So please, of what use is these infrastructures and buildings? More or so, most of these buildings or infrastructures, as you might even know, are decaying. They are no longer habitable. People can't stay in them. So you are still collecting money. You collect 85% of their annual income, and if they want to collect their money back, they have to borrow it as loan. They can only borrow up to 20%, and you have right to say no. When an African leader refuses to pay the colonial tax, it often leads to coup. So you see, when an African leader refuses to pay that tax, it leads to coup. And as long as African leaders continue to pay those taxes, they can remain in power as long as they want. Cameroon is a clear example. So that is why you will now begin to understand why the younger generations are rising up. They are taking their country back. That's why you see the situation in Mali is the way it is. Burkina Faso, Niger, now Chad, Senegal, and many other countries will join. Yes, this time around, we Africans, we have to unite ourselves more than ever. Our ancestors did it in the past with less resources. We are more sophisticated now. We have technology and equipment at our beck and call. If we unite ourselves, we can collectively stand by each other and break the remaining very last of the imperialist chains and be free once and for all.